Jenkins free, right wing to win it. He made it. He made the three from the right wing.
Welcome to the inaugural Rise and Fire Hoops Talk. Clint Schweitzer, Noah Groniger. We are so pleased to bring you our Hoops Only show for the first time here on the Great American Sports Network. It feels great, man. It feels great to be here. We're going to be talking hoops all year, taking you all the way to March Madness, brother.
Woo! Cannot wait. This is Gonzaga's year. I can feel it.
You never know.
No,
Hey,
not with. No.
we got to. I tell you what, we're going to start off big too because we have a huge guest coming on our first ever Rise and Fire show.
Phi Slamma Jamma.
None other than Reid Gettys, former member of Phi Slamma Jamma from 1983 Houston Cougars, also college basketball analyst, done a lot of work for the Big 12, the Big 8, and still continues to do a lot of work for the Texas Longhorns, the Big 12. He's right in the heartbeat of this. He's going to be talking about the Kansas Jayhawks. Going to be talking about the rest of the conference. Who can unseat Kansas? Can anyone? You got Baylor, a surprise team right now. We're going to talk to him about all that and much more, including the documentary, the 30 for 30 Phi Slamma Jamma that just aired in the last couple months. A great look at that team. Probably the greatest college basketball team to not win a national championship were the 83 Houston Cougars. Lost, of course, famously to Jimmy Valvano and the North Carolina State Wolfpack in 1983 at the Pit in Albuquerque, and we're going to be talking to him about his experience with that film, being on that team with Akeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Benny Anders, that great team in Houston that didn't win the national championship, but always remembered. And Reid Gettys is always a favorite of mine growing up as an analyst. Always remember him calling Mizzou games growing up. Doesn't do a lot of those anymore as Mizzou's on to the SEC. We're going to even ask him about the Missouri Tigers, who are an atrocious dumpster fire of a college basketball program right now. But Noah, the top 25 this week coming out, Villanova's back on top, man.
They haven't beaten anybody. Come on.
No championship hangover for the Villanova Wildcats, man.
Well, not when you're playing the teams that they are, but UCLA gets a huge win over Kentucky that vaults them to number 2, and then you got Kansas sitting right there. They lost a close one to Indiana, but they're at number 3, and they are looking like one of the best teams to beat.
Frank Mason and Devontae Graham right now looks like the best backcourt in the country, challenging even that of Duke's right now, and that's saying something. That's going to take you a long way. The leadership that Kansas has, I think that it's a crapshoot. They're the third-ranked team in the country. Kansas is going to win the Big 12. I think that's pretty much a given, although you got Baylor, you got West Virginia, maybe even Iowa State sitting there to give them somewhat of a challenge. They're going to lose a game somewhere. Can those teams stay consistent throughout conference play? I doubt it, but Kansas is going to win that, whatever 12th it is, 12th
but you got
league
Duke
title.
Sitting there at 5, and I still look at them as the favorite to win this thing. They got Giles, Bolden, Tatum out, who are coming back, getting healthy, getting in the swing of things. So I look at Duke as the favorite. When those 3 guys come back, I mean, they're at number 5 right now. They're giving everybody their best shot, and they've got 3 McDonald's All-Americans sitting out. Come on.
And they're joining the likes of Grace Nellen and Luke Kennard, who are already top-line players for the Duke Blue Devils. I mean, this is going to be a challenge for Mike Krzyzewski, just figuring out this lineup. I know they played about 6 players early in the season back when they lost to Kansas. Now you got 9. You got 9 legitimate players you can throw in there. That rotation is going to be something else.
Golden State Warriors-esque.
Are we throwing Kentucky out of the mix after a home loss to UCLA? Because, when you got Malik Monk, you've got, Fox coming back, and you've got Isaiah Briscoe returning as a sophomore. That's a lot of scoring right there. Those are your top 3 scorers right now for the Kentucky Wildcats.
They're young, as usual, and they figure it out as the season goes along. This early season loss to UCLA isn't a huge cause for concern. They're going to get better on the defensive end. Right now, they think they can outscore everybody, and they learned a good early lesson that that's not the case. You got to get back on the defense. You got to play transition basketball. You can't let UCLA leak out. You've got to play solid defense no matter who you're facing. Just because you roll out those Kentucky jerseys and your All-American status and all these top recruits doesn't mean you're going to win every game.
John Calipari's got something to preach here. A home loss will do that. And if you can get this freshman that they have, Adebayo, he is maybe the next Willie Cauley-Stein. He's the 6'10" player. He's not 7 foot like Cauley-Stein was, but he's got more muscle. He's more muscular. If he can figure out this game, he's a raw talent. If he can figure it out this year, Kentucky's going to be scary. There's no challenge for them in the SEC whatsoever, although Florida's better. South Carolina's undefeated right now, and Arkansas is supposed to have one of their best teams under Mike Anderson. I think he should be on the hot seat for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I think so. But you talk about just South Carolina in the SEC. They beat Michigan Michigan. They beat Syracuse, who's a fringe top 25 team. So you can't just poo-poo them away. But when it comes to Kentucky, I mean, there's just no match there in the SEC form. No match whatsoever.
And we're going to go ahead and welcome our guest this week on our inaugural Rise and Fire basketball show. It is none other than hoops analyst Reid Gettys. Reid, welcome to the show, man. We are so glad to have you on. Man, college basketball is off and running. It's great to see the sports being showcased in just a great way right now.
It's going great, and I agree. It's a great time of the year. Man, it was a great weekend, and I sat in front of the TV, and it's nice to have college hoops back on.
Well, it was kind of crazy because you had the college football championship games going on, and I told my buddy, I said, hey, you've got UCLA, Kentucky, you've got Gonzaga, Arizona. These games might be more meaningful than the college football championship games that were going on as it played out. I mean, that's really good showcase the way college basketball has been showcased so far. I think it's just been great, and people are really getting into it early, I think, this year.
Yeah, it's also a great start, and I love the early, the pre-conference matchups, the UCLA, Kentucky, and you get a chance to see all those great freshmen in the ball kit. My gosh, is he off to a start or what?
Well, it has been great. And do you feel like some of these bigger programs, I'm talking, of course, Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, these teams tend to play each other early in the season. Do you think that they kind of fall on the sword a little bit for college basketball because those premier matchups are what get eyes on the product early in the season?
Yeah, no, I love it. Bill Self's always done it. And he'll play a schedule that very few other people play, and more are doing it. And man, I love it. Go no further than looking at Waco and what Baylor's done. So a team that starts off not even ranked and really probably not even close to being ranked, and suddenly all they do is jump up and in a 3-week span beat 3 top 10 teams, 4 top 10 teams, I think they now beat. And to me, man, that's what makes it really fun.
All right, Reid, I don't know how much you've seen Gonzaga play this year, but they've got these transfers. Nigel Williams-Goss, Jordan Matthews, Jonathan Williams from Mizzou, and these 2 young freshman big men, Zach Collins, Kevin Tilley. This may not be one of their best talented teams. I mean, you're going back to Kyle Wiltshire, Domantas Sabonis, but this is the most balanced team. What do you think of Gonzaga?
Yeah, I'll confess to you, I haven't seen them play. I've read about them, and Mark Hughes says it's one of his best teams, and that's saying something. I follow that conference just because my old teammate Dave Rose is the coach at BYU, and I talked to him this summer. And I don't think Gonzaga, they may be undervalued right now, but they're not going to speak up on anybody because Dave Rose was talking about those kids and what he had and who he had sitting on the sidelines waiting, and so it'll be fun to watch those 2 teams go at it.
Well, as we look at the conference that you're very familiar with, of course, the Big 12, of course, you've got Kansas right now. You look around, you've got West Virginia's got a big win over Virginia recently. Baylor, you talked about moving up into the top 5. Iowa State's right there on the outside. A lot of people, though, Reid talked about the Texas Longhorns and the young guards that they had last year that were coming back, and the team that Shaka Smart was going to bring back this year. Right now, they did just get a win over Alabama, but lost to Northwestern, Colorado, and UT Arlington. And people are kind of wondering where this team's heading. I know you know a lot about the Longhorns. What do you see out of them?
Yeah, every time this time of year, every season, there's a list that you say, well, man, I'm surprised by those guys. And so I'm surprised by Baylor in a positive direction, and I'm been surprised by Texas in a negative direction. And well, they are really struggling, and I'm not sure you can just write it off as, oh, those kids are young. They're loaded with talent, and the big Allen kid can play with anybody in the country. And it was one thing to lose to the three they lost in a row, but then to have a guarantee game against UT Arlington. Now, UT Arlington's got a great coach, and they got a kid that's an NBA player, but that's not a game. You play a team in your educational system, and it's got a city designation after it. That's not a game you're supposed to lose. And so right. I think there's a lot of early season looking in the mirror, trying to identify, exactly who they are. And I know that Shaka's been frustrated, and he said the other night, he said the second half he saw glimpses of things that were positive and silver lining. But man, they've been bad. They're off to a really bad start. And that's a team that needs to turn it around. And you got to assume that those young guys are going to get better. But this, they were young last year, so the guys that were older, with the exception of Taylor, uh, these are the guys they counted on last year. So I've been a little surprised the way they've started.
Well, I want to ask you about your old team, the Houston Cougars, of course, Kelvin Sampson, and done a really good job getting them back turned around into respectability. The Houston Cougars are 6-1. Not, maybe a win that has stood out as being a signature win yet. They did lose to LSU. They play Arkansas coming up this week. What do you make of the Houston Cougars? And are you surprised Kelvin Sampson hasn't taken made the leap back into a Power 5 job at this point?
Um, yeah, that's a lot there. No, I'm not surprised he hasn't. I hope that he doesn't. It was a home run hire by Mac Rose at University of Houston. Kelvin Sampson is a proven. He is going to be successful. He's been successful everywhere he's been. He's taken over tough jobs before. And the U of H job, when he took it over, was not a good job. They don't get a lot of good support. The cupboard was bare, and he's building it. And to be honest with you, he's 2 or 3 years ahead of where he has any reason to be. He's got a tremendous group of guards, and I mean, really good kids. He's got a kid named young sophomore named Galen Robinson Jr. who can play, and they've got a shooting guard, an undersized shooting guard, a kid named Rob Gray, and he can play with anybody in the country. It's really good. They got a freshman kid, a 6'4" wing that's going to be really good. And their problem is they just have no inside presence at all. They've got a kid, an undersized kid named Devon Davis, 6'7", who's going to be okay. But they need to go to Arkansas. They need to go to Fayetteville, and they need to play well. They went to LSU. I think they were up by 1 at halftime and lost. Ended up getting blown out and just fell apart in the second half. And so I think Kelvin's going to find out a lot about his team against the Razorbacks.
Well, what do we make of the Duke Blue Devils, a team that has a loss to Kansas, but my gosh, they're getting healthy, including getting back guys like Jason Tatum, Harry Giles, to go along with Grayson Allen, Player of the Year candidate. Duke looks just absolutely loaded right now, and when you look at it, you got to look at the top teams with the top talent. Kentucky obviously has lost. Duke, Kansas, those teams right now standing out. Is Duke going to be the team to beat going on the rest of the season, though?
No, not in my book. In my book, the team to beat is right there in Lawrence, Kansas.
Okay.
I love what Bill Self's put together, and it's so unusual to have a team, one of his teams, dominated by the backcourt. But the Jackson kid is everything I think people expected him to be, and maybe even more from what I've seen. And he's got the pieces. To me, that's the best team in the country. Now, it's hard to say with the Duke, all those freshman kids, you haven't seen them on the floor together. May not, it's arguable whether you're ever going to see them all on the floor healthy. But one thing's for sure, the Kennard kid's not coming out of the lineup. And so suddenly you're going to start talking about redefining roles, and it'll be interesting to see how it all fits together. But if you're asking me early on, to pick the team that I've been the most impressed with, that's going to be Bill's team.
Yes, and Kansas with 11 straight, I believe, Big 12 championships. Can't ever look past them, and Kansas is tremendous as always. But Reid, I want to get into you a little bit because recently the documentary Phi Slamma Jamma came out into just rave reviews. It's one of my favorite ones, and I'm a junkie for 30 for 30s. I've seen all of them several times. Keep them on my Netflix playlist frequently. But you were a huge part of that documentary, and just without getting into it too deeply, just how did you think it came out, and how did you feel about your participation in the Phi Slamma Jamma 30 for 30?
I thought it came out really good. Some people have been a little critical that the whole human interest story on Where's Benny may have been overplayed a little. I didn't think so. I thought it told a neat story. The reality is, at the time, Benny wasn't the story of the team. Benny was more of a distraction. But I thought that Chip Reeves, the executive producer, thought he just did a terrific job of pulling a lot of information together and telling the story of the team, and then kind of intertwining this human interest story about what happened to Benny. And Benny was a remarkable talent. I mean, he had NBA superstar just written all over him, and ended up just kind of pissing the whole thing away, and it's a tragedy. I enjoyed the way that he told Benny's story. But I think the thing that pleased me the most was at the time, because when you play with two of the 50 greatest of all time, as you imagine, the story was really at the time about Clyde and Akeem.
Mm-hmm.
And not as much, Mike Young wasn't a part of the 30 for 30, but he was such a big part of it. But I felt the producer did such a nice job of making it everybody's story. So there were a lot of guys that had roles in the film that you might have gone, well, I don't remember him. I don't remember him playing. And they were just as key, members of the team as anybody. And to me, that I enjoyed it more because Chip made such a great effort to include a lot of different voices and perspectives. And at the end of the day, I was really proud of it.
Well, I'm glad because you had an integral role in you were in a lot of the wraparound stories, just talking about everybody and your involvement. You were a Deadeye shooter yourself, that 82 team, one of the greatest. I mean, just in me growing up, I'm only 32, so this run that Houston made, your guys' team, Phi Slamma Jamma, was a year or two before I was even born. But just growing up, seeing these stories, and then finding out later that you were involved with the team because again, I wasn't old enough to have known it or remembered it, but seeing you as a Big 8, Big 12, basketball analyst, I was like, that guy was on Phi Slamma Jamma. That's insane. So seeing that story and being able to see it all come to life for me as someone that didn't get to experience it or see the team play was remarkable. And Reid, I thought you just did an excellent job with it. And I thought it's a story that needed to be told, and maybe up there with what 91 UNLV is the two greatest teams maybe to never win a national title.
Well, it's remarkable to think about. You're a young 18, 19, 20-year-old kid in college, and you're a part of something. And while you think you understand it and you appreciate it, man, the fact that here we are 35 years later, and people are still talking about it, that just blows my mind. I mean, it literally it's an amazing. It was an amazing group to have been a part of, and I was blessed to have been a part of it because athletically, I didn't fit in with those guys. And Coach Lewis, one of the best, I think one of the best parts of the story was when they kept talking about how Guy just made it work and how he put pieces together and he mixed and he matched and he let everybody, he maximized, put each person in a position to maximize their strengths and cover up their weaknesses. And at the end of the day, man, that's what coaching is all about. So it was a cool story, and it was fun to be a part of the film.
Well, great. And before we let you go, Reid, one team that I've got to ask you about because we are here in Missouri. This is certainly a team that's not thriving, not part of any national conversation. But I've heard you call so many Missouri games and do so much Missouri basketball analysis growing up as part of the Big 8 and the Big 12. Here we are with Kim Anderson's third year. Missouri still just really struggling to find itself. This is historically a very solid basketball program, and I don't know how much you get to see the Tigers now that they're part of the SEC. They're kind of out there, not being successful. They're just sort of a team that's just fallen on completely hard times. What do you think of Missouri's situation right now, and how do they get that turned around, if it's even possible at this point?
Yeah, I don't want to act like I know a lot about it. I don't. I miss Missouri. I don't miss Colorado and Nebraska as much. I miss A&M and Missouri being a part of our league. I love doing Missouri games, and I loved, covering, some of those great rivals and the atmosphere. And I've been so close to Sun Bowl over the years that, man, it's heartbreaking. I thought Kim was the answer. I thought Kim was the answer several hires ago.
Right.
I wish they'd have hired Kim, and and golly, it just doesn't seem like they can get it going, and I hope he does because man, you talk about somebody that everybody pulls for and everybody likes, and it's almost comparable to the Charlie Strong situation in Texas.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much people like him. It doesn't matter what kind of guy you are, and it doesn't matter. All the things that are important at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, wins and losses. And I hope they turn it around because, man, I love that program. was covering games there. But I miss them, man. I miss the Tigers being a part of it.
Well, that goes for us too, certainly as those that cover Missouri. We miss Missouri being a part of it. But Reid, I'll tell you what, cannot thank you enough. Cannot appreciate you enough calling in and talking some hoops with us today, man. We really appreciate it. And I know we'll be watching the rest of the year. Going to be a lot of big games coming up. And as the conference season unfolds, we'll have to do it again, man, down the road as the conference season unfolds. We'd love to have you back on, man. We'd really appreciate it.
You bet. It's my pleasure. Good talking to you.
Thanks a lot, Reid. Appreciate it.
All right.
And great to hear from our special guest, Reid Gettys. Great to be off and running here
Yes.
on the Rise and Fire show. We're bringing it to you. You know, we've done so many things over the years. We do college football. We do the NFL. We do sports nonstop here on the Great American Sports Network. We just wanted to do a show dedicated to college basketball, to the NBA. We're going to do NBA talk too as this thing goes on. Right now, focusing on college basketball here.
Although Klay Thompson just got 60 last night, and he didn't even play the fourth quarter. So UCLA alum, we'll mention that, and then we'll get back out to college basketball.
Hey, absolutely. Hey, but we talked about Gonzaga. We asked Reid Gettys about the Gonzaga Bulldogs out there in the West Coast Conference. Is a really good conference this year because you have not one but two teams, Gonzaga, St. Mary's. They're going to be fighting it out for the conference title.
St. Mary's beat Stanford. Other than that, they really haven't played anybody, so it's still to be determined, especially when they face this super deep, super balanced Gonzaga team. Anybody can go off at any night. They're sharing the basketball. They're really better on the defensive end, which has been a struggle for Gonzaga over this whole span of Mark Few. Yeah. They just can't play defense, but I like how this team is shaping up. Jordan Matthews is a sharpshooter. Nigel Williams-Goss from Washington transfers over. They play Washington coming up, so that'll be a reunion for him. I look for him to have a big game, and Shemet Karnowski coming back from the back injury. We missed him last season. He's big, and those two young, talented Zach Collins, Kevin Tilley, 7-footers, gives us height that a lot of college basketball teams don't have in today's game. Yeah,
this is such a guard-oriented game, especially come tournament time. But Gonzaga is going to have that that size.
Got
is
the
going to
big men, they got the guards, they got it all.
Well, hey, in the top 10 right now, maybe a little underrated. You've seen how the top 25's played out. Conferences. We are not even to mid-December yet. What is the best conference of college basketball so far in the non-conference?
Oh, man.
ACC, Big 12.
Yeah. I like the ACC right now. Like I mentioned, like Duke, I just feel like they're on collision course for a championship. I feel like they're going to be in the game with those three guys that aren't even playing right now. I mean, Duke's playing great basketball, and to add those three to the mix, if Krzyzewski can find the right mix and match with those guys, I just think they're going to be unbelievable, hard to stop. North Carolina, I mean, they lost to Indiana. I mean, Indiana's beaten Kansas and North Carolina, but then they lose to Fort Wayne.
That's still boggling my mind.
Are you kidding me? Come on, you've got to come out every night with the same effort, and they did against Fort Wayne. So Indiana's got something to prove to me when it comes to consistent all throughout the season.
Yeah, and you still got Syracuse, a fringe-ranked team right now. We're seeing that. Maybe the ACC, not the top to bottom. You don't, or as of right now, have
Virginia
teams like Miami that maybe is looking under the radar this year. Maybe a Wake Forest. We'll see. That's all things that come into focus more as the conference season comes along. The Big 12, we talked about it.
Yeah,
is it better than the ACC right now with Kansas?
Baylor.
West Virginia's got a big win over Virginia. Baylor's beaten everybody behind so far. And Iowa State is always going to be a really good offensive team that plays no defense but could knock anyone off on any given night.
I think it's pretty much just Kansas and Baylor in there, and that's all you've got. I see, and a lot of people come back at me and say it's just Duke and North Carolina, but you mentioned the Syracuse who could jump in there. Virginia Tech's getting some votes to get in the top 25. So I look at it as 3 to 4 teams in the ACC and maybe just 2 in the Big 12. So.
The Big 10, a little bit coming out of the gate. You got Michigan State, Ohio State unranked to start the year.
Yeah.
Indiana,
Wisconsin loses to North Carolina and Creighton already. They have 2 losses. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Big 10 is. The Big 10 was probably the best league the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Things maybe focusing back down south a little bit down to the ACC. But guys, we can't thank you enough for joining us here on the Rise and Fire show. Our first of many. We're going to be taking you right through March Madness right here on the Great American Sports Network. Please tweet us at GASN Sports. You got a guest you want us to get on, you want a team you want to talk about, get the interaction going. We'll put your tweet right up here behind us and we'll make that happen, man.
Oh, we'll make it happen. We'll talk about it all. Give us your picks, who you think's rising, who you think's dropping, who's going to rise and fire and shock the world this week. Let us know at GASN Sports.